If we were to time travel to the 1920s, what would we wear to blend in? Because you've got the flapper party costumes, which are sort of a caricature of what we imagine the 20s would be like. If we look at the more historical 1920s costumes, obviously the manufacturing is different. They're all made by machines using plastic fabrics in most cases, different beads, but they're also shaped differently. They're much shorter than the actual 1920s dresses were. I guess because we want to feel sexy if we're going to a party. So the flapper dresses were short for their time, but not as short as we actually make them now. So I guess that's why they're shorter now, because at the time, like, showing your ankles was like, whoa. I think if we were to time travel to the 1920s, we wouldn't blend in unless the clothes we were wearing were tapped into the values and ideas of that time. I'm starting to think more and more that fashion is the material representation of the realm of ideas. For better and for worse, the ideas that we see in fast fashion are pretty grotesque. So I've been learning about Plato's forms, which are these invisible ideas that are represented in all the things in the material world. They're kind of like ideals, but as they're translated down into the material realm, they are imperfect because they're subject to change and decay and entropy, whereas in the idea realm, they're forever unchanging and perfect. I'll link below some videos which explained the concept of forms in a way that was really easy to understand. And the example that they used was the form of beauty, which could be represented in a horse, could also be represented in a rose. A horse and a rose are very different, but what they have in common is the form of beauty. And that beauty is just undeniable. We can all agree that a horse is beautiful and a rose is beautiful. It's almost like all the objects that surround us are artifacts or souvenirs from their home world, which is of the ideas. So like the flapper costume that we know today is almost a false memory. When we look at Art Deco, fashion, art and architecture, we can see the values that they hold. I would say there is a purity of form that comes from assessing the material on a case-by-case basis and then building the design from that material, rather than designing first and then choosing a material to sort of plonk in there. I'm going to include a quote from The Fountainhead. That book really hit for me, I think, because I studied architecture as well, and you see this architect fighting against the institutions and the culture, basically. But it's a really beautiful book about the Art Deco philosophy and the ideas. This quote really impacted me because there's so many things around us that we've become untethered from the original idea. Like how we say that a car has horsepower, but I don't know if anyone alive would know how powerful a horse is because we've always had cars. Art Deco really cleans up those relics of the past and cuts them away. And I think that's what makes it so future-oriented and so sleek. It's like unburdened by the past in many ways. Futurism and Art Deco are like this. It was one of the ideas that really shaped the objects and the fashion of the time. Futurism was very interested in movement, maybe because of the invention of the moving picture, which we're a little more separate from now because our video technology is so advanced. But for them, it's like a series of photographs that come together and make a moving picture. If you remember Thayat from the V&A video that I made, he had some really beautiful futurist fashion design that showed these lines of movement sort of sculpting the form of the dresses themselves. He was thinking about these geometric forms and their motion through space as the wearer moves. No longer static like in the Victorian era where everything was like corsets sucked in, very like impractical, stiff clothing. The Victorian clothes are very much designed for stillness, and Art Deco is hurtling along like a high-speed train. If any era of clothing was made for time travel, it would be the Art Deco clothes. They're lacking in a certain rigidity and ornament that might tie them to a certain decade. The trend cycles at the moment in fashion are really out of control. It's like we keep reviving decades from like the 1950s up until now. I remember being a teenager during the 90s revival that happened on Tumblr, There were all these choker necklaces, band t-shirts, very like grungy clothes. It was contrasted with the plastic pastels of the time, creating an aesthetic called indie sleaze. But it was a 2010s take on the 90s, not directly 90s stuff. It took the object, say the 90s choker, rather than the idea that created the 90s choker. And so that revival becomes just another trend that fades into history after a year or two. I think transcending the time that we're in to create timeless fashion involves transcending our own ego and experiences first, which is very hard to do. Any fashion that's made about the current political landscape is going to connect with people immediately right now, but it's going to become dated very, very soon because politics changes so quickly. Making things inspired by your own memories, experiences, and even your cultural heritage is limiting it to your lifetime. My experiences in a mortal body, in a flawed world, create kind of depressing fashion, to be honest. And it's depressing for me to spend my time working on, and depressing for the people who have to look at it. But outside of myself, the world of the forms is perfect, and it uplifts me when I focus on that for long periods of time, which is a bonus. In the 60s, they started designing clothes for the future, and they were imagining that women would wear nothing but sheets of formed metal.
In the future, nothing, apart from a bit of metalwork, will adorn the female form. And that will take a bit of getting used to. It's a sure thing that a hammered aluminium shoulder piece like this will be a knockout with a boyfriend. But it might not be such a bad idea after all, for if, as predicted, this is the look of the year 2000, the lasses will wear nothing but a chunk of aluminium.
It's so funny to look at now because that was so informed by their time. Like it's so 60s, and it's not at all what we're wearing today. Kind of like how the flapper dresses of today are a 2020s take on the 1920s. So designing for the future does not create timelessness. Recreating things from the past also keeps you stuck in your own era. Subtle touches like the shorter silhouettes in the modern flapper dresses betray that they were made in the 2020s. It seems like as long as we stay stuck in our own human experiences and timelines, we're trapped by time. The forms are exactly as they were when Plato was talking about them. Our attempts to bring them into a physical design won't be perfect. All the materials will degrade, but focusing our efforts on this makes our work better, and I think it also makes our life better. I hope you enjoyed this little chat about the forms. It's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. Even though I'm very new to Plato's forms, it really clicked for me because I've been thinking about these invisible ideas and like the right way to do something for a long time. I'm designing some stuff for the summer, some sailing outfits and sundresses, and to connect with their ideal form, I've been doing some like closed eye meditation, listening to binaural beats for inducing the theta brainwave state, just lying there and like coasting through, thinking about it. And that has really helped to connect to a purer form and like forget about all the stuff that I'm seeing around me and all the trends and all the data in my brain that I don't want to muddy the waters. I'm trying to get like a pure connection to something eternal. If you're familiar with Plato's forms and you have any recommendations for future learning, let me know, because the stuff on the internet has been fairly limited and my local library doesn't have anything. So I'm a bit like, where to now? Like, I would love to deep dive into the forms, but it's just been hard to find stuff. So if you know anything, please drop a link. If you want to learn more about timeless fashion design, check out my video on V&A. I mentioned her in this video in relation to Futurism and Thiat. She is really tapped into timeless designs. Like some of the stuff she was making, it doesn't look like it's from the 1930s. It looks like you'd see it on a red carpet today. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week.